Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
Cruising your way on this episode of Off 90. We visit a farm that raises its own sheep and produces its own cheese in Nerstrand. We check in on a growing trend in the housing industry. We visit an exhibition of poets and painters in Zumbrota. And we see a display of works exclusively by women in Rochester. It's all just ahead, Off 90. Hi, I'm Barbara Keith. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Off 90. The people at Shepherd's Way Farms in Nerstrand raise sheep and produce cheese from their livestock. They feel there's a way to live that combines hard work, creativity, and respect for the land. Shepherd's Way Farms believes the small, family-based farm still has a place in our society. Everything they do and everything they make is in pursuit of that goal.
Somewhere back in our histories, I think maybe everyone was a shepherd.
I'm Jody Olson-Reed and I'm a cheesemaker. This is my husband Stephen. He is our shepherd.
Shepherd's Way Farms is a dairy sheep cheesemaking operation that my wife and I and our 4 boys operate just outside of Nerstrand, Minnesota. The goal, of course, is you're taking sunshine, turning it into grass, turning it into milk, turning it into cheese. We started farming in the fall of 1994, and with a small flock of non-dairy sheep that we hoped would become dairy sheep. And we were in a very small rented property at that time.
I really like sheep milk cheese. There's something about the sheep milk that allows the cheese to develop a real depth of flavor. The quality of the milk is the most important thing in making a good cheese. So if you want an outstanding knock your socks off cheese, you have to have the best milk. As a cheesemaker, I love knowing what our sheep eat, how they live, what they're doing, and that the milk is coming right from the milking parlor into the milk room. That's more important than my abilities as a cheesemaker. I just have to not mess it up. Goat cheese has capric acid, which gives it that tangy flavor that we recognize in goat cheese. The sheep milk is by nature a little bit sweeter. It has more fat, more solids, so it has a potential to develop more complex flavors, more flavor. The sheep milk also has more calcium than cow or goat milk. Because it has more fat, it has more of the nutrients, vitamins that come with the fat, like A, vitamin A, for example.
It also has a higher proportion of HDL to LDL, so the cholesterol is better for you.
We sell our cheese in a lot of different ways. Direct to customers at farmers markets. Most of our focus is local, so you can find our cheese at co-ops and bigger specialty grocery stores, specialty cheese shops, restaurants. We're very fortunate to have quite a few chefs that like to use our cheese. And then we also have our cheese in a variety of segments of the country. San Francisco, DC, Chicago, Boston.
Holy cats, do we get feedback. You know, one of the great things about the farmers markets, of course, is you're seeing thousands of people every weekend. We do 3, 4, 5 farmers markets, so you're getting instant feedback, you know, hundreds of times a day.
My favorite are usually the blue cheese people that you can have a spread of cheese and they walk up and they zero in on the blue cheese and the look on their face and the sound they make when they eat that cheese. That is the best compliment.
We make one of the best blue cheeses in America. It's placed top in its class multiple times at the American Cheese Society. It's written up in all the fancy magazines. We don't use steroids, hormones, insecticides, pesticides. What we do and what we believe in is trying to keep a more balanced, healthy approach to how we raise our animals, how we care for our animals.
We work hard to be good stewards of the land and make decisions for the farm and for the animals that also benefits the environment, and we want to put as much back in as we get from the animals. People are really seeking out in the cheese world the same thing they're looking for in the vegetable and meats, where they want to know how it's made, who's making it, that special care is being given to it rather than being mass-produced anonymously.
And I always make the point that people intellectually understand that local doesn't necessarily equate to geography. You know, if I'm visiting a customer in Providence, Rhode Island, or Seattle, Washington, and I say, my name is Stephen Reed, my wife and I make cheese in Minnesota, you know, would you like to try it? Oh, I love buying local. You know, they've equated that term local with knowing where their food is coming from. In January of 2005, we had an arson fire that destroyed all of our barns and over 600 animals. And it was really a devastating, obviously, experience, and it really, you know, could have been the end of Shepherd's Way Farms. And we made the decision almost immediately that no, this is just another trial. And but that we were not going to give up. And the community, you know, really stepped up. It was in many ways a tremendously powerful experience in terms of bringing our family closer together. I think it's tremendously valuable what we do, even if we're not going to get rich doing it. I mean, I feel that this is something that has to be done, but it's hard work, you know, I mean, it's hard work. Like when I wake up in the morning, like this morning, and I'm walking out to the barn, and I look off to the northeast and I see the sheep in that morning sun on the hillside grazing, it's like, man, that moment is what makes this the greatest job, you know, in the world.
Have you ever felt like all your stuff owned you? Well, we met a woman who has learned that living with less is a joy. She embraced the tiny house trend, and she's even taken it one step further to become self-sufficient on her rolling acreage near Winona, Minnesota. Let's join Leah Carlson to find out how people can live big in a small space.
My name is Leah Carlson, and I am a tiny house dweller and aficionado. So a tiny house has roughly defined as, you know, some people say under 400 square feet, some people are really radical and say it's under 100 square feet, so, but a lot smaller than even a small house. I think the thing that appeals to folks is the idea of not having to have a lot of stuff and a lot of space for stuff. It starts to feel like your stuff owns you. So I did a rough sketch and I brought it over to my neighbor who knows how to do everything, and said, "Do you think we can build this?" Well, believe it or not, as a tiny house dweller, I'm actually claustrophobic. So I made it as tall as you could legally have it, which means there was room on the south side for extra, windows up above to let light in. And that was really important to me, so it would feel really open. Well, again, a lot of people have built-ins that are functional, and I just have my stuff functional and really mobile. So one of the things I have is all my bookshelves are actually crates. They can be stacked up, or right now they're all underneath the bed, holding the bed up so that the bed becomes functional space. And how it's arranged today is just one way of arranging it. And part of why I am here is because I wanted to try and kind of go the next step in self-sufficiency and have a space to grow my own food and learn to, can and put stuff up and just see how much I could actually, do myself. I wanted to be off the grid with solar panels. I do not have indoor plumbing. I collect rainwater off the roof, and it's filtered and stuff. So I do, one thing that really changed is being really conscious of water use, because I'm hauling all of it, and it's not difficult once you have a system figured out, but you start to realize I started to realize how much water I wasted. I would say, there's a whole mixture of people, from folks who are interested in it to folks who are building one. And everybody kind of comes at it slightly differently, but I would say there's a real appeal to kind of minimalism. I live with the rule, if something comes in the front door, something else has to go out the back, because there's no room to add stuff. I don't want to, have a small cluttered space either. I want it to feel really good and open. And then there's all the discussion about put it on wheels, not on wheels, to have a loft, to have built-ins, to have modular, all of those things are lively discussions. It kind of behooves people to really read your zoning, before you start working on a project, and don't make any assumptions. I went through planning and zoning and everything that I needed to do, so it's all on the up and up. And it was initially on wheels. It's set down. I had to get a variance for the property, but the size was not an issue at the time. I believe since then there's now a minimum square footage, so that would be something to check. And sometimes a way around that is to keep your house on wheels. If a tiny house can be really, really well done and really beautiful, it's educating, especially your neighbors or, people close by, about what you want to do, what's the quality of what you've got, make sure you're up to building code and all that. I think that's going to eventually change perceptions, but we're still on the cutting edge of that. A couple handfuls of kind of smallish potatoes. But it is peaceful. It's nice to be away. I feel like I know every inch of this place, in part because I helped, design and build it, but in part because when your space is really small, you become really intimate with what fits where and how things go, and all of that kind of stuff. So your reaction of having, it feels so calm in here, I'd take that, it's comfortable like an old friend is.
Crossings in Zumbrota hosts an annual Poet-Artist Collaboration exhibit. For this display, artists choose a poem from which to get inspiration to create a piece of art. At the most recent collaboration, jurors winnowed nearly 200 submitted poems down to just 26. Other jurors selected 26 artists. The poems and the work they inspired were displayed together at Crossings.
The properties of water. On New Year's Day, near the Laurentian Divide, we set a fire on a lake as truth, things we can know for certain: wood, heat, ice, flame, steam, water, and fish, which the youth address, skewering light sucker minnows, lowering them through ice to list and fin and circle slowly in cold silence. We are a semicircle of drab, matted clothing, watching embers work downward, a dark wood matrix sinking, pulling our minds toward the properties of water.
Crossings is an art gallery, an art center, a concert venue, and we do camps all summer long, and just a community center focused on the arts. So the Poet-Artist Collaboration is in its 14th year this year. It is a way for artists to create artwork that is based off of and inspired by poetry. Poets will send in their poems. We get 200 or 300 poems every year, and then jurors will go through the poems and select 26 of them. And then artists who have sent us samples of their work are juried in by other jurors. And each artist chooses one poem, and it's first come, first serve. And then they will create their artwork based off of the poem they choose. So Justin has been participating for the past, I think, 3 years now. He does have a very outdoorsy view and a very Minnesotan kind of a view, I think, but also a very thoughtful and well-educated kind of look at the natural world. His poem this year, of course, is based on ice fishing with his family and friends.
I like to think that, it's something that I came into, not something that I sought out. I think it starts with my kind of DNA, my genetics. I have this urge to record things. Plus, I really enjoy reading it. I really enjoy the discipline. There's some suspense kind of for the participants because they don't send out any notifications saying, Greg Finnegan chose your poem. Each of the last 3 years I've just met the person and seen the art on the day of the gathering. So no, you don't really work with the person at all. So that's kind of neat when you get to meet and see the piece and see the artist and meet him, talk with him a little bit.
And then Greg is a great artist. We really are so fortunate to have so much local talent, I think, in southeast Minnesota, and Crossings is really a celebration of that, and Greg is a very good example of that. And one of the things that I really love about Greg's art this year is that, and this happens not infrequently, the artist will create more than one painting, or more than one piece for the poem until they feel like they get it just right.
I've done the poet-artist collaboration a couple of times in the past. What I do is I print out the poems and I go through them quickly, kind of scan them all and kind of mark the ones that I thought are most interesting. And then I go back through and read those completely and maybe do a little sketch or make some notes about a possible painting I could do. And half of the poems had already been chosen, including several I'd picked. So I looked through the ones that remained and I picked the one that Justin had done. His poem was about ice fishing, and I'd done some ice fishing in the past and I had some reference pictures, and I thought, oh, I could do an interesting landscape of ice fishing and those little houses out scattered across the lake, and I thought that would be interesting. You get the cold beauty of the wind blowing across the ice, and it's just kind of whiteout conditions sometimes, and the shore disappears, and there you sit, and you could be at the North Pole for all you know.
Well, again, I think this is a great example of how Crossings builds community through the arts, is by having this special evening and this special way for people to come and access poetry who wouldn't normally find it in the rest of their lives. And the art that is connected with it, I think, can give an inlet into the words, maybe for people who don't find it as easy to read poetry or who feel intimidated by reading poetry. To have somebody else maybe help them interpret it visually can be a way to understand the poetry better, or vice versa, if they are more of a words person, to get to understand the art better because they see the words with it. But also just that idea of everybody gathering together and saying, you know, let's have a night where we share all this together and meet each other is just, again, another way to build that community.
And the boys holler at a flag. "Come on, little men," says one. Hand over hand, all feeling a hook set and a tightness, a joining, flesh to flesh, air and water through ice. The wolf of the water is laid low. We return to our altar, acolytes of sorts, as the cold comes to the pike, each head to tail writhing slower, shorter, until its own water goes to ice.
La Notte delle Donne Tre means a night of women three. It was the third exhibit of its kind that showcased the work of local women artists, writers, poets, dancers, and filmmakers at the Creative Salon in Rochester. The focus of this event was to give the creativity of women a voice in our community. We talked to artist Cassandra Buck, who organized the show.
Art is part of me. It's like ingrained in my DNA. I have to have it for survival. I know that sounds kind of drastic, but it's true. Okay, so we're at the Creative Salon. It's been open for almost 2 years. It's run by C4, which is Concerned Citizens for a Creative Community. Yeah, it's just a space for creatives to come and collaborate and connect and create, and anything and everything happens here, so. La Notte delle Donne is Italian for a night of women. And when I first started to decide what I was going to call this exhibit, all-woman exhibit, I wanted something catchy and kind of romantic, so that's why I chose Italian.
Okay. Do you speak Italian?
No. It's an all-woman exhibit. It features visual artists and poets and dancers, basically anybody, any female that's creative or in the creative realm, and it is just to showcase female artists. I felt that women aren't as aggressive promoters of themselves as men are, and I felt that in Rochester, in the southeastern area, women artists weren't being as noticed, and so I felt that it was important to start something that would get them to be noticed. Well, I do oil paintings and mixed media. That's kind of the realm I've been going in recently. And then I love organizing exhibits like this, themed shows. It takes a long time to get everyone on the same page, you know, Facebook messaging and emailing and meetings and trying to get everybody on the same page. Title cards, you know, artist statements. It's a lot of collaborating that has to take place and make it happen, so. I feel it's one of my greatest achievements as an organizer, and just getting women to connect and, you know, be together and share their work together and share their work with others. I'm very proud of this. So. I've had positive reactions to this show, and everyone who shows has their supporters too. So, you know, everyone has separate support systems and they all come together and this exhibit happens, so. The art scene in Rochester is exploding right now. It's really a grassroots movement, and I'm really excited to see where it's heading. And, you know, in my personal growth, I feel like I've grown a lot, and all the artists around me have grown a lot, and showing our work and getting our stuff out there, and we're doing things together instead of in our separate little basements, and it's great.
That's all for this episode. Please help Off 90 meet its financial obligations by becoming a member of KSMQ Public Television. Give us a call at 507-481-2095 or 1-800-658-2539 or sign up online at ksmq.org. Thanks for watching. Join us next time, Off 90.
Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.